In this section, I'd like to talk about some important concepts in karate that are valid pretty much throughout the martial arts. Of course, there are different nuances, different systems have different ways of doing things, but essentially many of these concepts are universal in nature. The first concept I'm going to talk about is etiquette. Now, etiquette is the way that you behave, the way that you hold yourself. So in karate, etiquette is very, very important. Etiquette includes the bow. We talked about the musubidachi, with the heels together and the toes apart, and when we bow, we have our hands at the side, and we lean forward and bow. We keep our body straight. So from the side angle, keep our body straight. We don't hunch up like this. Keep body straight, and then back. This is our bow. Now, traditionally in Japanese culture, the Japanese use their bow as a form of greeting. When an older Japanese meets a younger Japanese, the younger person would bow lower than the older person because of respect. The older person is hopefully wiser. Not always true, but hopefully wiser. So this one bows lower than the older person. Same in karate. If a black belt bows to a white belt, the white belt usually would bow lower than the black belt, especially if the black belt is an instructor. Now, it's still important that the black belt bows too. He's not going to just kind of grunt and give you a nod, although that does happen. It's important that the black belt also shows respect to the white belt, because we're in here to learn from each other. Now, the different levels of bow are very, very confusing for Westerners, and understandably so, because that's not our culture. So I don't want to go into too much explanation in terms of how deep to bow and which situation you have to bow this way or that way, because really, we're living in the West and we don't do that in our culture. We shake hands. But in the karate dojo, there's a place for the bow, because this is part of Japanese culture, part of Asian culture, and we should respect that throughout our training, and this just shows a way of our respect for our art to practice the bow. So this is the first stage of our etiquette. Now, when you enter the dojo, you also, imagine this is the door right here, and I'm walking in from outside. When I get to the door, I would bow at the door, and then I would walk and enter the dojo. Likewise, if I'm leaving the dojo, I'm walking up to here, I'm going to turn around before I exit and bow once again, and then I leave the dojo and then continue on my way. The dojo is your training hall, or the place where you train. The bow, when you walk in, is again a sign of respect to the place where you train and to the people who you're about to train with. This also should press that button in your brain that says, I'm here to learn karate today, and I'm here to focus on karate. And then when you leave, hopefully you've had a good workout, you've had a good training session, you've learned something, you bow again to say thank you, and then off you go back to your everyday life, and hopefully not back to too many worries. But that time in your training, you get a chance to escape that outside world, focus on your karate training, become rejuvenated, and then leave and go back to your life. So the bow when you enter and when you leave should signify to you, this is, you're transitioning from the outside world into your dojo training setting. You're going to try your best for the time that you're in there. Maybe it's an hour, maybe it's 45 minutes, maybe it's an hour and a half. You're going to try your best. And then you work hard, and then off you go and you leave, and hopefully you feel better. This is one of the big reasons that karate is very, very useful and very important for all of us, so we can become rejuvenated with the energy that we get and be ready to face our everyday challenges. Moving back to the bow, when we line up, we do different bows. Okay? So we line up, we stand in musubidachi with our heels together, and then we kneel down in Seiza. Both knees will bend, hands on the inside of the knees. Left knee goes to the ground first, and then the right knee follows, and then we sit back on our feet. Our posture, as much as possible, should be in a straight line with our shoulders relaxed and back. Our hands will be in the middle of our thighs. If we put our hands forward on our knees, look what happens to the shoulders. They hunch forward. this means bad posture. Likewise, if I put my hands too far back, it pushes my shoulders too far back. So just the natural position in the middle of my thighs, this keeps my posture correct and keeps my shoulders relaxed. When we bow, the left hand goes first, and then the right hand joins it, making, looks like a triangle, or it could represent a circle of energy, this position here. And then our forehead goes down. We don't headbutt the floor or anything like that. And then the right hand comes back, and the left hand comes back, and we're back into position. So this is how we bow when we're in Seiza, kneeling position. The three bows that we follow in our school, the first bow is Shomen ni rei. Shomen means the front wall of the dojo. Now, traditionally in a Japanese dojo, on the front wall, there's often a miniature shrine. And on that shrine are offerings of maybe rice or the sake, the rice wine, and various other gifts and offerings on the shrine. And these offerings in the Japanese culture are to the past masters of karate, the ones who transmitted their style, particular style of karate, to the people who still practice today, such as myself and my instructor, of course, and now all of my students. So by bowing Shomen ni rei, we are acknowledging all of the effort and all of the hard work and all of the great teachings that the past masters of karate who are no longer with us have transmitted down to future generations. So this is a very, very important bow to remember. We don't say anything or do anything on this bow other than just keep quiet and bow. On the second bow, students bow to Sensei ni rei. Sensei is instructor and rei means bow, so the students bow to the instructor, whoever that is for the day. So the sensei usually sits at the front, students are lined up in front, and then the head student will say Sensei ni rei, and everybody bows, and the sensei will stay in this position. Or the students will bow. Now, Japanese are very humble and very modest people, and it would be improper for the sensei himself to say Sensei ni rei, because that's basically saying, you must bow to me, bow to me. And that's not necessarily very respectful or very humble. So usually the head student says Sensei ni rei. And then finally we bow Otagai ni rei. Once again, the same bow. And the sensei also bows at the same time. This is to each other, bowing to each other. So the first bow recognizes the past masters of karate, the second bow recognizes the instructor, and the third bow also must show respect to everybody in there. Now there's a lot goes on to getting students to class. Parents work very hard, parents are very busy, and they manage to get students to class. So they are also respected throughout these bows as part of the thank you to the parents and the people who support this person in the dojo who is there to learn karate. Now I have a wooden sword next to me just to show you the reason why the left hand goes before the right hand. Okay, so traditionally, now this is just a wooden sword, it's called a bokken, it's not a real samurai sword, but traditionally the samurai would carry the sword on the left-hand side of the body, like so. Left hand holding the scabbard, and right hand would draw the sword, and then maybe striking down different types of strikes, etc. But the important part is that the sword is on the left-hand side of the body, and it is the right hand which draws the sword, not the left. So if the samurai were carrying his sword, and in traditional Japanese life, they eat in a kneeling position, or they meet and talk with each other in a kneeling position. So often they could be around, if they're with friends, they probably don't have the sword right here, but if they're with people who they've never met before, or it's a not necessarily familiar setting, then they would still carry their sword. So when they do the etiquette and they kneel down for Seiza, the left and then the right, now in this position, by bowing with the left hand first, it still allows me to draw my sword. But if I were to bow with my right hand first, and now I need to draw my sword, it's difficult with my left because it's on the left side. And if I pull with my right, I fall forward and cut myself on the blade of the sword. Obviously not a good idea. So one of the reasons why the left hand is first is to allow the right hand to still be free and draw the sword if necessary. So this is part of our etiquette.